Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So I have been working on some dishcloths and I've been playing with some new yarn. And this yarn is, oh, I left the rest of it downstairs, but it's a 3-weight yarn. And I've been using this adorable little 3.75 millimeter hook because it calls for a 4. This was all I could find and it seems to be working just fine. But I did want to share my thoughts about this as I was working on this today, because I just basically go by size when I'm making these. So this is, it's about 7.5 and it ends up being 7.5 square. So I'm using this yarn. It's a little bit thinner than the yarn I've used in the past and that I've used in my video that I'll link up here somewhere. And then I also doubled up the yarn. So this is the a finished one. Not quite finished because I still have to tuck my little tails in. But you can see it's fairly thin textured, nice and sturdy still. I like it. But it definitely has a different feel than when I double the yarn up. Same yarn, just doubled up. And because I doubled it up, obviously, right, it's just single crochet stitches. Obviously, these stitches become much larger. So you can, let's get you a close up there. So you can see the difference in the stitches, right? So they're about double the size, double the yarn. And what I did was I ended up using a number 6 crochet hook. Let's see, do I have my number 6? So this is my number 6, right? And this is the almost 4, the 3.75. So you can see it's almost double the size. So I just went with the 6 because I felt like that would be just feel good to work with. So I did a video on wraps per inch to determine, you know, hook size to yarn size, all those things. But this got me thinking, I have never really looked into gauge very much because what I do, I've been just focusing over the last couple years on learning crochet stitches and making things that I use at home. So it's not been, you know, kind of like dish towels, scarves, etc., nothing that is super specific about gauge size, like a shirt, for example, or a sweater, or even a blanket. And if this looks familiar, I brought this out maybe about a month ago, and I found this at Goodwill. It's a little I Can Crochet step by step, and I pulled it out of my bag today and was looking at this, so I wanted to share a little bit of information on that. All right, so I have this Loops and Threads cotton yarn that I was also using for dishcloths. I'm just making some different ones. I'm gonna try to sell them at craft shows again and kind of get a vibe to see if people like the really thick ones, the thinner ones, if people have different preferences, just to offer some options. So that's what I got this for as well. And it's just a 100% cotton yarn. And when we turn it around, where is it? Whoops, right here, it's a medium 4 and it calls for a 5 millimeter crochet hook. Oh, and I have a 4.5 right here. I have my 6, and then where did my 5 go? I brought them all up here, and then there's my 5. So these are very close in size, all right? Let's see if we can kind of line them up. It's a little bit, obviously a little bit smaller. It's supposed to be a little bit smaller. Just a teeny tiny bit. But here's something that I noticed with one of my other hooks. So this is also a 5. So this is where I'm starting to think like gauge is definitely important, especially if you're working on a larger project or something that needs to fit specific measurements. Where's my boy 5? So this is a boy. These are, you'll find these everywhere. It's OG brand. It's around everywhere. This one is a no brand. I can't remember where I got it. I honestly have no idea. But they both say H8. 5 millimeter, but I noticed at one point, and maybe I'm hallucinating, but I feel like this one is wider. And so when I lay these on top of each other and try to center them, like I really do think this one's just a slight bit bigger. Can I do it? Of course not. I was able to do it earlier, but clearly on camera. So I feel like, I don't know if you can see it. Like I feel like this one's bigger, and it feels, when I'm holding it, it feels wider too. So I think if it's a slight difference, it's very slight, but we'll notice that those slight differences can make a big deal. It can be a big deal if you're working on something that needs to be very specific. For example, oops, sorry, wobble. like, you know, this is a pattern for a shirt. So if you're just a little bit off, then the size is going to be wrong, and then you're kind of up a creek, right? So the little box that's on here, I've never paid much attention to it, learning new things, but you'll see this little 4 inches by 4 inches, 20 stitches, right? 10 by 10 centimeters. And that's if you use the 4.5 millimeter hook. So, so that's if the 4.5, but it recommends the 5. So it's very close. I guess you can use the 5. I looked on the other balls of yarn that I have that still have a label, and they didn't have this little square. So I'm still trying to understand that mystery. So if you know, please let me know in the comments, because again, I've just always kind of been like, ooh, pretty yarn, let's use that, and that'll be good for this, and we'll just play around with it. So let's get into making a gauge square. So this says right here, every pattern will have a recommended gauge plus finished measurements. And the gauge is how many stitches and rows you should get over the span of inches or centimeters, which is usually a 4-inch or 10 centimeter square. So then that 4-inch square, the amount of stitches in that gauge determines how many stitches will be achieved for your finished measurements. So this got me thinking, because I want to make a blanket, and I think it would be good to know what I'm going to end up with. So I'm trying to learn. I'm not a big numbers girl, but you know, it's all part of the learning process. So we're going to make a 4-inch square using 2 different crochet hooks, just with the same yarn, so you guys can get the idea of how different both of these things can really be. So we're going to start with the 5 millimeter, okay, the H8 5 millimeter, and I'm just going to create a little 4-inch square. And I'm just going to do single crochets. So we're going to get our slip stitch and chain. Let's see how many we'll need to chain for that 4 inches. Okay, so for right at that 4 inches, we're stopping here. If this becomes our first stitch, that was a chain of 15. So now I'm going to, and that's really just to reference to, I want to kind of come back to that. So that was 15. So I am just going to single crochet a square, a 4-inch by 4-inch square, to see where we end up with the 5 millimeter hook, and then we'll start doing our measurements. And I'm curious to see how all of this works out too, because this I'm kind of learning as I share with you guys. That's just what helps me. The doing and talking through it actually helps me to figure stuff out and learn it. So that's what I'm gonna do, because of course, obviously, so for this one, for example, I did a chain of 31, so that I would have 30 stitches in each to get that 7.5 by 7.5, and this one I believe was 20. So that's a big difference in doubling it up, right? So I think that's where it really does start to become important if you really need to know your measurements. So I'm gonna finish this little square, 4-inch by 4-inch square, and then we will take our ruler to it and see what we can see. So we are rounding up that last little stitch. Whoops. And I think that puts us right at 4 inches. Let's see. Yep, right at 4 inches. All right, so let's finish this up and trim that little tail. Okay. So now I have my 4-inch by 4-inch square. So it says you can measure your gauge swatch using a ruler, and then it shows photos. I really love this book. I think I found it on Amazon. I think I linked it the last time. I'll double check and see, and I'll try to link it this time as well. just in case anybody wants to check it out. So it says right here, it shows the images, which I love. I'm a very visual person, so I appreciate that. So you can also use a, oh gosh, what's it called? A stitch gauge, obviously, a stitch gauge. I don't have one of these handy dandy little things. I might try to find one after this, or you can just use a ruler to measure. I have a ruler, so that's what we're going to use today. And so in the book, as I'm reading now, because I'm great with directions, hashtag ADHD, it says that even though it's based on a 4-inch square, if you're doing a swatch for a project to make sure things are right, to do a 5-inch swatch, just for a little more accuracy, I guess. And then it says, crochet enough chain stitches, then work in the pattern specified in the directions. So we're just going to assume the directions called for a single crochet with a 5mm hook, like if that's what it says in the directions with this yarn, that's what we're going to do. And basically we're just double checking to make sure the size is going to be what we want it to be for the finished project. Okay, and then it says to line it up with the whole stitch. And so this is why I think they want you to do 5 inches, because then you can kind of start with your stitch rather than the edge, and then you're counting stitches within the 4 inches. So you're laying it on a flat surface. So now I understand why they're saying 5 inches, to kind of give that little leeway space. So to measure how many stitches we have across, and I know this ruler is hard to see because it's see-through, obviously, right? But unfortunately it is the only ruler I have at the moment other than a big giant yardstick, so this is just a little easier. So this is within our 4 inches, right? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 stitches. So I don't know how I got, so that's the whole stitches, right? 1, 2, so 13 whole stitches. All right, and so it says if that ends up being less or more than what the pattern specifies, take this whole thing apart. So we're not weaving our little tails in. We take the whole thing apart. We try it maybe with a different hook size. If you have more stitches, so like say I have the 13 whole stitches here and it calls for 12, then redo the swatch, take it apart, redo the swatch with one size larger hook, because of course if you have a larger hook, less stitches because they take up more space, and then vice versa. If I have 13 and it's calling for like 14 or 15 stitches, then go back in with a smaller size hook. Okay, and then it recommends that keep your swatch, like don't take this swatch apart, keep this swatch and start your project, get your yarn, get the hook size that matches up, and then once you've got about 5 inches worth crocheted, double check this across it to make sure that it's still the same gauge. So you're still getting the same amount of crochet stitches per inch as you were with your original swatch. And so the big question here is, right, why wouldn't it be the right size? And then it says because sometimes you might crochet looser or tighter, called tension, right? I did a video about that too, when you're working across a larger piece of fabric. And that's true, because like it's very easy to kind of keep these smaller stitches together, but as it gets bigger and we're holding the work up a little higher and things can get a little looser, maybe we start crocheting a little looser. So I totally understand that. So definitely kind of keep that swatch, and I think that's interesting. So now what I'm going to do, and just to show you guys the visual difference on the same yarn, I'm going to create another 4-inch square, because I didn't make this one 5 inches like I was supposed to. Oopsie. And I'm going to do another 4-inch square, but I'm going to use my 3.75mm hook just to see what happens. It's the closest thing I have to the 4 right here. The 4 point, well, I mean, I guess the 5 is closer to the 4.5, so I'm a little confused by what this is. Again, if you guys know what this is about, please let me know. But so yeah, so tension size is important, and then also, like I said, with these 2 hooks, let me see if I can find this again. Like this one, it looks so much bigger to me. It's almost like a 6. Where's my 6? So this one, honestly, I feel like, oh, just dropping everything. I feel like this one is closer to the 6 than the 5, but anyway, so I guess like the branding, if it's an off-brand or something, can make a difference as well. So I'm definitely seeing the value of the gauge. So let me do another little 4-inch square using the cute purple hook, the 3.75, just so we can see the difference in the hook size and compare. Alrighty, so I have this one finished also. I'm not going to pull that through because I'm going to frog this out to do a complete project in a minute since I'm not following an actual pattern here. So here you can see the difference in the crochet sizes. Let me get you guys a bit closer. All right, so here's our smaller one. Let's see how many, we have per inch on this one, or how many in the 4 inches. So we have, where's my little hook? Let's line it up so that I can see that a little bit better. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and we have our little edges as well. So let's see, let's lay it on top of the other one. So you can see the difference. Also, when you use the smaller hook, obviously it's a little less stretchy than the bigger hook, but that just goes to show that it makes a couple of stitches difference. So if you're following a pattern, then you know it's really easy to say, oh, I don't have the 4, I'll just use the 3.75, or I don't have the 5, I'll use the 4.5. It can make a difference for sure if you're trying to follow a pattern, especially if it's a pattern that's something that is supposed to fit a certain way, even with a hat or something like that, I would think. So there's a little tip in the box right here. It says, don't be influenced by other crocheters who say they never bother making a gauge swatch. So, yes, okay, I joke because that sounds very serious, but, you know, and then it says, keep in mind, professional crochet designers, creative artists who design projects you make and wear have to make gauge swatches before they make it to make sure you have the accurate results and all that. So again, I am all for this. I think this is really valuable. This is something I'm going to keep working with, especially if I start making more complicated designs, which I would like to. Again, for just doing my dishcloths, like something like this, I can just measure it. I can measure it, make sure it's about the size I want while I'm playing with the different, you know, different yarns, different patterns, different whatevers. You see how nice and thick that one is. I just kind of like that. I thought it might be nice. Some people might like that more. Anyway, I digress. So I think it's valuable. I think it's important to know if it's something that's supposed to fit particularly. So I hope that was helpful to you guys. It is something new for me. So if you have any thoughts on that or any tips on that, please do let me know. Because yeah, I'm not like a huge numbers person, but I think this book has been great. It's been a good little find. And I'm glad I picked it up, and it's just a nice little reference. So again, I will see if I can find that and list it for you. Oh, and it's got all the little crochet hooks. I just now saw that too. So, all right, so it's got lots of helpful information. So I will see if I think I saw it on Amazon. I'll put the link for that below if you guys are interested in that. Meanwhile, I have other fun projects coming up. I'm going to be doing some more artsy things as well. So please like, subscribe, share if you found this helpful, and I will see you guys back very, very soon. Take care.